Hi there, I am the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the north-west of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul. And it's titled, No Matter What, and Bridget Jones, Stories about Eternity and Love. And I'm going to actually begin with a favourite story, actually. This is it. I can't really go through the illustrations, but I will tell the tale. Hopefully, this is a wonderful tale, wonderful, beautiful illustrations. It's called No Matter What by Debi Gliori, and it's a favourite of mine. It's really a story about love and the eternity of love, I guess. But here goes. Hopefully, it will lead into the rest of the things I'm exploring in this devotion. So No Matter What by Debi Gliori. Small was feeling grim and dark, playing toss and fling and squash, yell and scream and bang and crash, break and snap and bash and batter. Good grief, said Large. What is the matter? Small said, I'm a grim and grumpy little Small, and nobody loves me at all. Oh, Small, said Large, grumpy or not, I'll always love you, no matter what. Small said, if I was a grizzly bear, would you still love me? Would you care? Of course, said Large, bear or not, I'll always love you, no matter what. Small said, but if I turned into a bug, would you still love me and give me a hug? Of course, said Large, bug or not, I'll always love you, no matter what. No matter what, said Small and smiled. What if I was a crocodile? Large said, I'd hug you close and tight and tuck you up in bed at night, each night. Does love wear out? Said Small. Does it break or bend? Can you fix it? Stick it? Does it mend? Oh, help, said Large. I'm not that clever. I just know I'll love you forever. Small said, but what about when we're dead and gone? Would you love me then? Does love go on? Large held Small snug as they looked out at the night, at the moon in the dark and the stars shining bright. Look at the stars, how they shine and glow. But some of those stars died a long time ago. Still they shine in the evening skies. Love, like starlight, never dies. Beautiful, beautiful story, don't you think? I think in olden days, during COVID, I probably told that story as Captain Dan, if any of you remember that. Maybe if you look on my YouTube channel, you might find a different telling of it. Somewhere. Oh, by the way, I must apologise. I have a really heavy cold, so I hope you can understand me. Molly was full of life on Monday morning. I think she spent the best part of 2 hours just running and playing and jumping and playing and bouncing around in the park. It was a joy to see her running so alive and enjoying the joys of what seems and feels like spring, even if it's not officially so. It did feel like there was spring in the air. I spent some of my time in that time in a conversation with a friend and of course Molly's boyfriend Ronnie, Molly's favourite dog in all the world. They had a ball together. And me and my friend also spent a bit of time talking about a few things together, particularly friends we have some concerns about. Good gossip, I guess you'd call it, because it's about care and concern. As is often the case in such times, I spent most of my time listening. In life, I generally follow the generation in the suggestion. My brain's fuzzy, not working. The suggestion from the book of James 1, verse 19 to 20. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. I think these wise ancient words from 2,000 years ago are something worth paying attention to in this our day and age. We need to listen more and not be so quick to anger. As we were talking, I did share a little bit about a sense of weariness that I felt this winter, especially around grief. Both congregations that I serve have lost several people this winter, and I think I'm a little tired, hence perhaps a weakness to the cold later in the week. But it was so lovely to find myself walking in love and life and watching the signs of spring bursting through as they've really burst through this week actually. And the colours of the flowers all coming to life. And it was really lovely to watch my sweet little dog Molly just loving being alive. It was a joy. I've been to the pictures a couple of times in recent weeks, and I enjoyed both occasions sharing with friends and enjoying the whole cinema experience at Everyman in Altrincham. And I've been to see two very different films. The first being a complete unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic, which was superb, I have to say. And the second being a very different one, Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy. I'm mad about the boy, you know that one. It's the fourth instalment, I think. I think it is anyway in the Bridget Jones series. I think I saw the original one. In fact, I did, and I think I may have seen another one, but I'm not sure which one that was. I have to say, it wasn't something I would have chosen myself, but there you go. Sometimes you don't get to choose things in life. But anyway, I began to watch with not a great deal of expectation for the film, and I surprised myself. As I got caught up in the humour, which was so easy to engage in, and the absolute quality of the actors and the wonderful characters, it was great. I really found myself caught up in it immediately. It felt good. And it's, of course, a romantic love story. These films are, of course. That said, there's far more to it. And what held me, was when I realised that, yes, it truly was a love story, but not what I was expecting. It was a story about grief. And grief, of course, is all about love. In fact, grief is the price that we all pay for love. We all love, and thus we all grieve. We grieve when we lose that which we love. It's a story about Bridget beginning to live again after the loss of her husband Mark Darcy, the father of her two children, Billy and Mabel. It's a funny and poignant portrayal, sweet and painful at times. It also has this rather lovely ability to explore all the experiences and the stages of grief, all the different conversations and reactions to grief, how people react to those who grieve. To explore the spiritual, the religious, the psychological, the social, and plain old, all the human experiences that all who grieve and begin to live again will experience, a universal tale. And it's not only a journey about Bridget's grief, but also her children too, particularly I felt her son Billy. His journey through grief was threaded through the whole story. Yes, obviously it is Bridget who gets all the focus and attention. This is the film, of course. That said, it was his journey through grief, really, that spoke so powerfully to me, if I'm honest. I identified with the little boy. And then, of course, there's also the rather lovely relationship after the young man, of course, that eventually forms between Bridget and Billy's science teacher, Mr. Wallaker. Now, as their relationship, which is not initially romantic, develops, there's this wonderful interplay between the secular and the spiritual, about life and death, and about what lives on after death, if anything at all. And as I watched a particular scene in the classroom where Bridget's talking about her work and they get into this conversation about life and death, I guess, it brought to mind a wonderful little extract from Forrest Church's wonderful book, Love and Death, My Journey Through the Valley of the Shadow. I just kept thinking of a particular paragraph from that book that one of the it was just a conversation about exactly what Forrest is speaking about here. I'll just share it with you. Whatever happens to us after we die, life doesn't end in oblivion. It continues in love, our own love, once given, everlasting. After death, our bodies may be resurrected. Our souls may transmigrate or become part of the heavenly pleroma. We may join our loved ones in heaven, or we may return to the constituent parts of our being, to the earth from which it came, and rest in eternal peace. Life after death, about life after death, no one knows. But about love after death, we surely know. The one thing that can never be taken from this world, even by death, is the love we have given before we die. Love, I swear it, is immortal. And I'm with him all the way. And this is something that I think the conclusion to the film really is what the film's telling us, really. And what Debi Gliori's talking about at the end of this rather lovely story. Love, we can be certain of love living on. What happens to us after death, in a physical sense, I guess, is a matter of faith. And that's for each person to come to their own conclusions about. But this idea that love lives on death is the beautiful message of the film, and it's a similar message to that told in this beautiful story, No Matter What, by Debi Gliori. Small looked at the stars, how they shine and glow. But some of those stars died a long time ago. Still they shine in the evening skies. Love, like starlight, never dies. To me, this is what the whole film was about, really. And regardless of what the individual's foundational beliefs about these things were, this is the conclusion I think everybody came to throughout the film, watched by that lovely owl that kept appearing in the garden as they looked up at the stars, and every time they looked out the window, obviously trying to say that was Mark Darcy, but who knows? The wisdom of the ages. Now, the film also rather humorously portrays what to do and what not to do when journeying with someone through grief. How to be a friend or a colleague or a doctor. And the key I have learned is rather similar to the lesson from the book of James, actually, 1 verse 19. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak. So many folk wanted to get Bridget and the children through their grief. They offered terrible advice and some offered good advice. But really, the best thing to do is to simply accompany another through grief, and people find that difficult. If a person, though, is allowed to, in time, life will continue on. The grief and the love within the grief becomes a part of us, really, and we live again. The ghosts are part of us. The ghosts are part of us. And when you live again, you feel what I felt on Monday morning watching Molly playing So Alive in the park. Spring coming to life after another winter. Another gift of another spring. None of us know how many more we have in this physical life. To live fully alive is to live with the whole of life, even life's great sorrows. But we don't get to filter life. We get all that is life. We can't pick and choose. We may be able to, we have a say in how we respond, but not so much in what happens. The Sufi mystic Rumi suggested that we be a guest house about life and welcome each new arrival, even if it be a crowd of sorrows, to invite them in. Rumi said, meet them at the door laughing, treat each guest honourably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. But how many of us can say that grief is a welcome guest at our door? None of us, I would suspect. And yet, how many of us would not invite love in? And grief, of course, is the price that we pay for love. Grief is about love. It can seem too high a price at times, and grief can seem like a hard companion. In her book, Companion Through Darkness, Stephanie Erickson says the following. Grief is a tidal wave that overtakes you, smashes you up into its darkness, where you tumble and crash against unidentifiable surfaces, only to be thrown out on an unknown beach, bruised, reshaped. I once heard grief being described like a vast and lonely plain where all the echoes are only of one sound, or that grief rises suddenly in unexpected moments, or that it's a constant ache, ever present, just cut like toothache, but in our hearts. C.S. Lewis once exclaimed, no one ever told me that grief felt so like fear. Grief is not easy, and I'm sure none of us would wish to invite in this unwelcome guest. And how many of us truly welcome grief in others? How many of us will really let others truly grieve, even if it's for a short time, or perhaps for a short time? But we don't allow others to grieve. We want it finished with. We want our own grief finished with, and grief will have its way. Like the tide of the sea, it will have its way. It is better by far to share it, to speak of it, though it is wrenching to do so. William Shakespeare noted, give sorrow words. The grief that does not speak whispers the o'erfraught heart and bids it break. And it's a difficult path, but it's the only path through grief. Even if there are a crowd of sorrows, as Rumi said, who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, invite it in. Don't run from it, because you can't escape it. You have to live through it, and you can't rush it. Just like, was it the Supremes? You can't hurry love. Well, you can't hurry grief. You'll just have to wait. And grief doesn't always appear as you expect it to. It doesn't always appear as tears. Just because someone does not shed a tear, does not show outward physical signs, does not mean they are grieving. You rarely see me crying. Very rarely. Grief affects people in very different ways. Grief can make us cry uncontrollably, or it can make us go completely numb. Grief can make us feel guilty or depressed or fearful or angry. Grief can cause emotional problems in our hearts and physical problems in our bodies. Grief can put us in a state of disbelief. It can make us withdraw. It can make us feel like we're going crazy. In other words, no matter what the textbooks may say, the stages of grief do not offer a direct route. And you don't just go through it and that's the end of it. Because life's just not like that. We're not machines, despite what some people say. Lumbering robots. If you think that about a human being, you know nothing about a human being. Now, but there are people who suggest a passage, and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model from her book published in 1969 suggests the following passage: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that's the model, but it's too often we forget that Kubler-Ross also said that this list is not a comprehensive list, and it does not happen in a direct linear order. No, if you think that, you've misunderstood what she was saying and what grief actually is. Now, there's a funny moment in the Bridget Jones film when her friends, wanting to get her through the grief, say that she's going through the stages. But they don't really understand what they. One of her friends is training to be a counsellor, and he seems to understand it the least, actually. But they name these things, but there's no real understanding of what's going on. But they're friends, and they love her. They want to get her through. They want her laughing again. But in so doing, they are not allowing her to journey as she should and needs to, as we all need to. It's really important to understand that grief is not some clinical journey that follows a set pattern. For grief is about love, human love. And does love follow a pattern? Come off it. If you think that, you've never known love. Grief is not an illness. It's not an illness that we need to get over and recover from and just leave behind. For grief is about love and the loss of the physical aspects of that love. So to leave it behind will be to let go of the love. That's not right. As Megan Devine has said, grief no more needs a solution than love needs a solution. We cannot triumph over death or loss or grief. They are immovable elements of being alive. If we continue to come at them as though they are problems to be solved, we'll never get solace or comfort in our deepest pain. Grief is not an illness, unless, of course, you think that love's some kind of disease in which we're in need of a cure. There's a song there, isn't it? I'm not going to sing it. Every line seems to have a song today. When we lose someone that we love, our lives are changed forever, just as actually loving someone changes our lives forever. Our lives are never the same again. We don't rise above it. We don't pretend it's not there. We don't get over it. We live through it, and we are changed by it, transformed, not transcended. For grief and grieving is about transformation. It's not about transcendence, but that's the spiritual life anyway. That's about changing, transformation, being made into something better, I guess. Grief's not about explaining loss or understanding why something happened. Grief is about finding meaning in the absence of an explanation. I'll repeat that. Grief is about finding meaning in the absence of an explanation. And what is the meaning? Well, the meaning's in the love that lives on. The love that is immortal, which is so beautifully portrayed in this delightful romantic comedy, Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, I'm Mad About the Boy. and so beautifully articulated in the children's story, this one here, no matter what. I'm going to repeat that final line just to end this little devotion. Large held small, snug as they looked out at the night, at the moon in the dark, and the stars shining bright. Small, look at the stars, how they shine and glow. But some of those stars died a long time ago. Still they shine in the evening skies. Love, like starlight, never dies. Yeah. Love, like starlight, never dies. Love, like starlight, never dies. So I'm going to end with some final words of blessing. And we know we need to bless more. Our world needs more blessing. And we can all bless. And we bless when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to life in love. Never dies. So let's return to our lives. Let's go now in peace and deeply regard each other. Truly listen to one another. Speak when we must speak our truth in love, and be ready in any moment to disarm our own heart and always live as if a realm of love had already begun. And may the blessings of God be with us all. May it come to life, and may it do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do. Love, like starlight, never dies. Love, like starlight, never dies. Love, like starlight, never, 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 no, never, it never dies.